Good morning. You're listening to the BLAINESWORLD Show, heard here on WPVM LP in Asheville, North Carolina, 103.7 on the dial. This is the BLAINESWORLD Show, as I mentioned, and we're heard each Wednesday at 9 a.m. You can also watch us on WPVM's Facebook page. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, and I'm here in my Zoom studio in Fairview, North Carolina. Each week, we focus on the Asheville theater scene, as well as on positive news and information about people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce Jim Davidson, who's chair of, I love the title of this, Jim, Bark in the Park, being sponsored by the Rotary Club of Asheville. And Jim, you can feel free to wave to all your friends in Facebook world. So if you're watching, can I get a big wave? That's Jim. Okay. And I should mention that Jim grew up in New Jersey. I love what you call it, the land of high taxes.
That's right.
It used to be remembered for the turnpike and where you live on the turnpike, but I like your way of remembering it better, the land of high taxes. After retiring, he moved to Candler and soon joined the Rotary Club of Asheville. And where do you live in Candler?
Off of Monte Vista, back of the Home Depot, out in development.
Okay, yeah, I used to live in Biltmore Lake, not too far from
I
there.
know where that is. That's
Okay.
that's high rent compared to where I live.
Okay.
Just so you know.
He was active in the Rotary in New Jersey, where he coordinated a successful fundraising event, Bark in the Park, for 7 years. He's excited about bringing the event to Asheville. Jim was a high school history teacher, ran 3 companies, and wrote several history books, including 2 on Lindbergh kidnapping and trial. And then, Jim, that second book is going to come out sometime in the near future?
Yeah, the next couple of months, I'm hoping. It's all about everything that occurred when Bruno Haltman was brought to Flemington, New Jersey, the county seat of Hunterdon County. And he was in jail there for about 8 months. And the town turned into a madhouse. This is a little country town. The first weekend that he was there, they had 50,000 people show up.
Well, I'm really anxious that you're going to finish that second book, because we'll do a show, as I mentioned to you, on the second book. And if listeners tune in, they'll ask to find out everything they want to know about the Lindbergh baby kidnapping just through you. That'll be cool.
Well, maybe not everything, but...
So, Jim, you were telling me off there, you grew up in New Jersey as well. And so when you were a kid growing up in New Jersey, did you always know you wanted to be, first of all, a teacher?
Yes.
What got you into teaching?
Well, my father ran an industrial rubber company in Flemington. He was 3rd generation, and he wanted me to go into business. All I wanted to do was to go into teaching. So I ended up going to college, then Lehigh for graduate work in history, and then I taught in local high school. But I was making $8,000 a year, and with the summers off, I worked as a carpenter, and I started flipping old houses, and I was netting $45,000 on the side every year and a half. So after about 8 or 10 years of teaching, I left and went into construction. I owned 3 different companies through construction. And then, as fate would have it, when my father was 80 years old, he said, "I can't do this business forever. Why don't you take over?" So I sold my company that I owned at the time, took over his business, and I said, "What accounts do you want me to take over?" He says, "I don't want you to take over any of my accounts. I'm still working, find your own accounts." So he died working at 88, and I've been in the rubber business, industrial rubber products, mostly for railroads. I still work out of my office in my house, but I deal with all the railroads on the eastern seaboard.
So is the company still in existence?
Yes.
Very cool. Because I'm saying it's cool because I had a similar kind of experience that my father wanted me to go into his business. He was in advertising, and I chose not to. I just didn't want to, and I didn't. But I was lucky in the sense my brother was in the business, so the business kept going.
Right.
But that was quite something, your story. So you came back after all these years and to get back into the business, as it turned out. How did you get into writing? Especially, now, it's the 2 books you've written on Lindbergh. Have you written other books?
Well, I did. I was president of a historical society in East Amwell, which is just outside of Flemington. I know you know the area. And I wrote an East Amwell history book for Arcadia Press, which was a picture book. And that was the first book I wrote, excuse me. But then I was really into the Lindbergh kidnapping, and I became very good friends with Mark Falzini, who was the archivist of all the Lindbergh trial memorabilia, kidnapping memorabilia down at the State Police Museum down in West Trenton, New Jersey. And he and I became friends, and we were talking one day how all the books on the Lindbergh kidnapping had the same 30 pictures in it.
Right.
So he and I decided to do a pictorial history of the entire Lindbergh kidnapping, and we spent a year going to archives all over the country, finding pictures that nobody had seen, and we came out with another Arcadia Press book of the Lindbergh kidnapping and trial. And coincidentally, it became the third largest selling Arcadia Press book after the Biltmore and after Ocean Grove, New Jersey. Those were the two leaders.
And talk
And
about,
then I
I
wrote another book that's not an Arcadia Press book, but a regular book that's at the publisher now on all the stuff that happened in Flemington during the trial.
And that's one's coming out next
Yes.
book. So
Yes.
describe then the process. Do you enjoy the writing?
I enjoy the research and the writing, but I hate when I give it to somebody to proof. I've had about 5 people, friends of mine, proof this book, and then it got to the publisher who wanted to have it proofed. And by the time I'm done with the publisher, I don't think it's going to sound anything like the original book I started at about a year or so ago.
Okay, but that's, I guess, the nature of writing.
I
And so,
guess.
as I mentioned to you, I look forward to having you on board to talk about the book when it comes out.
It'd be
And by the
great.
way, talking about Flemington, Old Memories, had a very exciting experience, and you probably know it, that for a while they were doing the trial in the courthouse. Do they still
Yep.
do that?
No. About 10 years ago, they closed the courthouse down to renovate it so it looked exactly
Right.
like what it did in the Lindbergh trial. And the person who ran that was a good friend of mine. He taught with me at Hunter and Central, Harry Caseman. And when the courthouse was all done, after him having run this trial for 20 years, they said, well, we want you to rent the courthouse now for every performance. And he said, forget it. And he moved to Bucks County, and that was it.
Oh, yeah, because I guess I was lucky. I saw it when they...
You did. It was very interesting.
It was very
Yeah,
interesting.
I saw it a couple times.
Very well done. Great concept. So you then come to this area, and so the question I always ask, Jim, what brought you to Asheville area?
Well, basically high taxes. As I mentioned off air, my house, which was a 1750 house right across from the Lindbergh driveway. And by the way, I have all kinds of interviews of the people that were there when the kidnapping took place, which was really interesting. And then reporters rented my house and stayed there during the kidnapping. My taxes were through the roof on that house, and my fiance lived right down the road, and the taxes were through the roof on her house, because New Jersey is literally the land of high taxes. So we were both, well, she was retired, I was semi-retired. So we both had vacationed in Asheville previously, so we decided to move down here. So, and my taxes down here are 1 month of what my taxes were
Wow.
up there.
And the other thing I love about here too, Jim, the weather is just incredible. I think
Oh, yeah.
you know, like no winters and just no snow at least. So
So I like the restaurants.
they too. Well, we were talking about that off the air. Yeah, you'll have enough to keep you busy in terms of the restaurants
I know.
in the Asheville area. So then, Jim, you got involved in Rotary, and you mentioned in New Jersey you were active in Rotary as well. Is that correct?
I was in the Rotary Club in Flemington for 30 years, and one of the fundraisers that we did that I ran for 7 years was a dog walk. And we had it around town. We had it in a big park where we had a band and food vendors, and people brought their dogs. And then we actually had a parade around the town, and we'd get 200 or 300 dogs. And this is in a little tiny town.
Right. Yeah.
And We had dog contests like the prettiest, the ugliest, the best trick, the best costumed. So when I came down to Asheville, one of the first things that hit me was how many dogs this town has, and all the restaurants that are, open to dogs. We didn't have any of this in New Jersey. So after being in Rotary for a year, I went to them and I said, they were looking for a spring fundraiser. And I said, well, I think I could pull this off down here. I don't know people who would sponsor it because I haven't been around in a while, but I can put the whole walk together. So this walk is going to be along the French Broad River. It's going to be at Carrier Park starting at 11 o'clock on June 12th. That's a Sunday. And we will have food trucks there. We will have the same contests. And we have, and you may know her, Molly Patton.
Don't know her. No. Oh yeah, she's with
jockey.
Right. Yeah,
jockey.
I know the name. Right.
Yeah, well-known disc jockey in the area. She's going to be there. We're going to have probably 25 or 30 dog-related vendors, and I think it's going to be a heck of a nice day, especially since Carrier Park has that pavilion in it, and that's where everything is going to be set up with the band and etc.
Go backtrack just a little bit. First of all, for the benefit of folks who don't know Rotary, so you have a whole lifetime experience, what is Rotary exactly?
All right, Rotary is an international organization. It started in 1911 in Chicago with some businessmen meeting. And the whole thing is it's a community service organization. It's in 150 countries. And actually, Ukraine had 50 Rotary clubs at the beginning of the war there. And Asheville has 3. There's a art club, there's a dinner club, and then there's a breakfast club that meets off of Hendersonville Road. And we raise money and then we give it away. In art club, we do a lot of work with scholarships. We sponsor a exchange student she's going to be in Berlin this year. We are building a school in Honduras, and it's just all kinds of community service projects. We work with Homes for Humanity and that type of thing.
Have you ever, I know in Asheville, several people have gone overseas. Have you ever gone overseas with any of the projects?
No.
Okay, but one of the things that always impressed me about the Asheville Rotary is they do some of these projects overseas, and then Mark Nolman, do you know Mark Nolman?
No, I don't.
He's active in one of the Rotary chapters, and he's a dentist, and he actually goes over.
Oh yeah, yeah. We have people in our club that are going down to Honduras with a whole mobile dental unit, and they'll be down there for 10 days, and they're leaving in a little while. And to give you an idea of something else that I just got involved in, the Asheville Rotary since 2005 have been involved with these honor flights, taking veterans to Washington for a day. And I actually, even though I was in the Marine Corps and could have gone as a veteran, I signed up to be a guardian, and I'll be going on the 21st to Washington. They're taking 88 veterans from the area. They do 3 flights a year, and they've been doing this since 2005. And I talked to one of the guardians the other day. He said he was on 37 flights so far, which I find amazing. I just think it's a great thing that they do.
One of the things also, and I give you a lot of credit for doing, but it points out the value of Rotary, is how you're a great example of somebody just getting involved right away. In other words, here, you come off a boat, you're in Asheville for a year, and you just jump right into Rotary. And then what's so impressive is that you just, I guess, raised your hand and said, I want to do something. Yeah. And it points out if somebody has an idea or a vision, they can do it. When you did this in New Jersey, were you the first one to do this?
I had read about a club in Washington State that had done this, and I kind of took it over from there.
Yeah. And did it grow each year in Jersey?
Yeah, it did. It was really good, but after the 7th year, I had some things going on that I could not do it. And, once I left, it pretty much stopped.
Right.
Um,
But the point is, and you're a great example of this, that if somebody wants to do something, they just have to volunteer, and chances are you're going to be able to find some place who'll welcome you with open arms.
right.
So is that what we found in Buncombe County?
Well, I have to tell you, when we moved down here a year and a half ago, it was right in the middle of COVID.
Right, yeah.
We had been active in a church. I was active in numerous organizations in New Jersey. I moved down here. The churches are closed. I don't know anybody. Rotary is closed, which was the first thing I went to. And it was hard for the first 6 months until the things started opening up. So,
But one of the things that's cool about Asheville, Jim, and you probably saw this as well, is that very few people are ever born in Asheville.
oh yeah, I'm finding that out.
Right. So we saw the same thing too. When we moved down, we knew nobody. I don't know if you knew anybody. We knew like nobody. But it's
No.
very easy to meet people because they're all also from other parts of the country. So it's kind of easy to get involved, and you chose to get involved in Rotary. So you're there for a short period of time, and then you just volunteered to run this event.
Yep.
Okay. And talk.
What I found interesting, and you probably found it too, because you came from Central Jersey as well, was that when I walk through an Engels, people actually say hello to me that don't even know me. That never happened in Jersey.
You and I would. So true. I lived. I'm shaking my head in complete agreement. We lived in an area in Belmead, and we walk around and nobody even would say hello. Just couldn't
Yeah,
believe it.
I know.
But the funniest thing, Jim, I don't know if you've had this yet, but we'd be walking outside, a lot of outside dining in Asheville, and we'd look at somebody and ask, how was it, the meal they were eating. They would actually offer us a sample. And say, well, you want to try this,
I
never,
haven't had that yet.
but never in Jersey. So keep that in mind next time you're downtown or if somebody's looking, offer them a sample. So you checked out the restaurants, but then you got involved in Rotary, and so you proposed this idea. You told them you had done this 7 years in elsewhere. What was their reaction?
Well, they thought it was a good idea. Most of their fundraisers are like they'll do a concert or something like that and get sponsors. That was the last one they had done last spring. But they never had an event, which we might have 300 or 400 community people at this event. I think it's going to be really big, and that's a good way for Rotary to get out in the public.
Fantastic way. So that how many dogs do you anticipate having?
Well, we're going to find out because I've already handed out 2,500 brochures. We are partnering with Brother Wolf Animal Rescue that is well known in the area. And we will be giving them part of the proceeds of this event. And in return, they have 98,000 people follow them on Facebook and 28,000 people on their email list, which they're going to be utilizing. I'm just hoping we don't have every dog in Asheville there because we're not going to be able to accommodate that.
Well, I was surprised when it came to Asheville. Two things, Jim. By the way, are you a dog owner?
Yes, we have 2 dogs.
Oh, so they'll be at this event?
Only if my wife takes them because I'm going to be too busy.
Well, it's funny because one of the things we do know where we live now in Fairview, though, is that, first of all, I'll ask you this. Do you know what percentage of people in Buncombe County have pets?
No.
I was amazed. This included cats as well, but it's about 70%.
Oh, man.
7 out of 10 people have either a dog or a cat, the last I saw. But what we see where we are, we got used to it, is that I believe, it's cool to have a dog, but there are no, we're not in a community per se, or with an HOA, so some people let their dogs roam, which is a little disconcerting until you get used to it,
Yeah, right.
Where you live, do dogs roam?
No. I have an acre. I fenced the whole thing in. I don't want my dogs roaming.
So hopefully they won't roam, but they will come downtown to this event. So what happens when they come down to the event? Starting at what time?
It starts at 11 o'clock. The walk is going to be like a parade along the French Broad River. and that'll be about a half an hour to 40 minutes, depending on the route. That there's a couple of routes that you'll be able to take. You can cut off if you don't want to go.
Yeah. Talking about cutting off, we may have lost, I think we did lose our guest for a second, so I'll just be talking a little bit, and we hopefully will get him back sometime soon. But this is the BLAINESWORLD Show on WPVM 103.7 on the dial. It's also on Facebook Live. And we're right now in a tape delay, so I'm just going
Am
to
I back there? Yeah.
We can hear you now, so we're making progress, Jim. We're just going to try to get you back on video if we can.
Hang on
If
a
not,
second.
Jim's working on it, but if not, Jim, you and I can just talk a little bit, and they'll just see me until we can get you back on video. There you go. Good job. So,
All right.
so they come down to this event, they register, they have to be there, I guess, what, by 11 o'clock to participate in the parade?
11 o'clock is, yeah.
Okay.
Uh,
Now talk about, it was really cool. So then within that, after the parade, there are, how many different separate contests are you having?
There's 7 dog contests. We have the prettiest dog. We have the biggest dog, the smallest dog, the best costume dog, the ugliest dog. And I have to tell you, it's something that happened at one of my dog walks that actually caused quite a controversy. Some woman
Right.
showed up with a goat, and she entered the goat in the ugly dog contest. And we thought it was such a joke, we gave her a prize, which either it was a big basket of dog toys and stuff that, well, there was a woman there with another dog, not as ugly as the goat, but she was very aggravated that she did not win and put up a big stink because a goat won the ugly dog contest. So after that, we don't allow any goats, although we had people bring flying squirrels and all kinds of crazy animals to these things.
Can a dog enter more than one contest or only one
Oh
of the
yeah,
7?
it's $5 to enter a contest.
Oh, so they don't run all at the same time, they run separately?
Well, one after another will run. So
Very exciting. Do some dogs enter all the contests? Or a lot of them?
probably not, but normally you'd see maybe 2 or 3 dogs. Like you can't enter the largest and the smallest at the same time, yeah? Or the prettiest and the ugliest.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's funny you have the ugliest dog because my wife always gets upset about that part of the competition. You know, she'll say no dog is ugly, you know, and you know, she doesn't want anybody to feel left out, you know, if they don't get recognized. I imagine too, talk a little bit about, Jim, both from New Jersey and what you're going to do here in Asheville. Who are the judges for these events?
Well, we're still looking. If you want to be a judge, Blaine, we could have you down there.
Yeah. What's the criteria for a judge?
2 eyes,
Yeah. Okay. But is you
impartial, don't own a dog.
Well, yeah, I guess that's part of the criteria you mentioned, though. But some people really get into it, the competition.
Oh yeah, like the best costume.
Right.
I have people show up with all kinds of crazy costumes. Some bought, some homemade. Sometimes the person will get dressed up and match the dog, and that's probably the craziest costume of all. The other one that's really good is the most amazing trick, because they have some of these dogs really have some good tricks. One of the things that we're going to have there that's going to be exciting is we have an agility trainer setting up an entire agility course, and she will show her dog. She's a trainer as well. And then for a couple bucks, you can take your dog through and see how good it works. And hopefully you'll sign up and have her train them. But that's going to be one of the best things that are going to be there.
Well, the whole event sounds like fun.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No,
we
go ahead.
have dog photographers there that you can have your picture taken with your dog. But the other thing I want to mention, besides Brother Wolf there, we're going to have 5 other dog adoption groups, all with dogs to adopt. So if you are looking for a dog, you can come with no dog and leave with one, which I was at a dog event not too long ago, and right next to me, Mountain Pet Rescue was there, who is also going to be at our event. They had 9 puppies, And every time I took a picture and sent one home to my wife, I got one word answer, no. But they gave away about 4 or 5 puppies, or not gave away, they adopted out 4 or 5 puppies. So we're expecting, a lot of dogs that are adoptable to be there.
Now, you mentioned a couple of things, but I wanted to ask you about your 2 dogs. So your 2 dogs will hopefully be there. We'll get to meet them.
Yeah.
Are they going to be entering any of the competitions, or are they barred from it?
No, they're not barred from it. But if you're the judge, I'll just slip you their picture first.
In New Jersey, did they enter the contest?
No, I was always too busy to have my
imagine.
dogs there.
Right.
So, and in New Jersey, I had Great Pyrenees, which are big white dogs.
Sure.
And right now, I have 2 little Pomeranians. So,
what was you mentioned before? What was the funniest costume we ever saw, or one of the funniest costumes?
I saw a woman get dressed up as a clown in a red and white striped outfit, and the dog had the exact same outfit on.
Well,
with a hat, a pointed hat.
Well, let me ask you then. I always wonder about that. Like on Halloween, some people do the same thing too. They dress up.
They have
dogs.
a Halloween thing in Asheville.
Is that a good or bad thing to have dogs dress up? Some people say it's animal cruelty or something, forcing dogs to get dressed up.
I don't think so. First of all, you probably only have the costume on for 10 minutes while they judge. So, and my dogs would tear it off in a second anyway. So I don't think it's a big deal.
Talk a little bit about then, Jim, people getting information for the event. So I'm really excited about this. It just sounds like a fun event. And by the way, we'll mention specifically Brother Wolf again. And you working with who are you working with, Brother Wolf?
Lee Craig.
Okay,
Leah Craig.
She's the executive director there, right?
She's the head person there.
Does a great job, yeah.
Yeah, she does a great job. They adopt out so many dogs. They have a facility over on Glendale Avenue, which is near Renovation Station. And it's great. They do a wonderful job.
Now, how'd you get hooked up with them, by the way?
Well, the 2 largest rescues are the Humane Society out on Brevard Road and Brother Wolf. There are other ones in the area, but not as well known and not as well funded and not as many volunteers. And I don't want to say not as well run, but I think Brother Wolf and the Humane Society are the 2 biggest. So now, you wanted to know about getting information.
Please.
You can go to our website, which is www.rotaryasheville.org, and a brochure will come up with all the contests on it, and it'll have that's the cover, you can see.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to go through to register, or you can register the day of. To walk a dog in the contest, to walk a dog at our event is $10. But you get a goodie bag. It's got all kinds of dog stuff in it. You get a Rotary bandana. It's all kinds of things in that goodie bag. It's well worth the $10. The only thing is, the only thing is you have to have your dog on a leash, and it has to be a short leash. It can't be one of those retractable leashes that go 25 feet.
Got you. And so if folks go, this seems like, and you can tell me New Jersey experience, this seems like a perfect kid-friendly event if ever there was one, So you want to bring your kids, that they're welcome as well. What's the timing of it? So you said it starts at 11. How long does it run till?
It starts at 11. You can get there earlier to register if you want, but all the vendors have to be set up by 11. We have probably 25 dog-related vendors plus rescues there. And then you can check out the vendors, enjoy the music, eat. We have a couple food vendors there. And then the walk will begin. And then when we get back, probably about 1 o'clock, we'd have the dog contest. And then you can just hang around. Vendors have to break down at 2. So it's not a real long event. Probably if you went there, you'd be there maybe 2 hours.
Okay, it just sounds like a fun event, and I wish you a lot of luck with it. I thank you very much for not only coming on the show to talk about it, but also volunteering to in your spare time to run this. So, kudos to you, Jim, and I look forward to meeting you hopefully sometime in the near future.
All right.
And you mentioned on the air, I don't know if I'll be there, but if somebody is interested in helping out, even if they're not a Rotary member, you said you're looking for judges. Somebody could help out if they wanted to.
Yep.
And could they do that at the website? Find out information. Who to
Yep.
contact?
They can call me direct at 828-633-1306.
Okay, I'll just ask you, this being radio, I'll ask you to repeat that. Again, if somebody wants to get involved in a real fun event, especially if they're big dog fans and whatnot, number again, Jim, is?
828. No, is that right?
Yeah, 828.
Yeah,
You got it.
828. I had to stop and think here. So I'm thinking New Jersey again.
Exactly.
828-633-1306.
Okay. Anyway, thanks for coming on board. Look forward to meeting you someday in person. Thanks,
Yep.
man. Okay,
Thank you.
speak to you soon.
Bye.
Okay. As Jim kind of works his way out of the studio, we'll try to get our next guest. There he is. And Lyndon's on board. Hey, Lyndon. Before I
Hi.
introduce you, I'll just mention that you're listening to the BLAINESWORLD show here on WPVM. Also, WPVMFM.org is the website, and our Facebook site, you can look at us. I'd like to remind you that our mission is to foster community through programming that cultivates dialogue to inform and entertain. The station provides the medium for artists, businesses, community leaders, and nonprofits to share their voice on live radio and also on Facebook Live. Listeners are invited to help support our efforts by making a tax-deductible contribution. You can do so by going to the website, WPVMFM.org, and looking at the donate option in the upper right-hand side. My second guest is Lyndon Harris, and before I introduce you, Lyndon, you can wave to all your fans and friends in the Facebook world. Okay.
Hi, guys.
That's Lyndon Harris. And Lyndon Harris, you may remember from a couple months ago, he was also a guest on a show talking about something else he was involved in, and we'll talk about that too. But I love how you describe your background, Lyndon. You came kicking and screaming to the world of forgiveness. As a former priest serving at the epicenter of the volunteer efforts at Ground Zero in New York City after 9/11, when his Lyndon fell apart, finding new beginnings through the power of forgiveness. Lyndon is now a forgiveness teacher, coach, speaker, and workshop leader. And the question I ask Lyndon is, in terms of you as a kid, where did you grow up?
I grew up in South Carolina in a little town called Gaffney.
Okay, heard of it, I think. And when you were growing up as a kid in South Carolina, did you always know you wanted to be a priest?
No. I wanted to be a radio guy.
Yeah, okay. Come join
Yeah.
us. But no, do you remember as a kid what you wanted to do?
I wanted to be a radio guy.
What did you-
I was building little crystal radios, and electronics was my hobby, and just fascinated by it all. Yeah.
So what got you away from being a radio guy into the priesthood?
I majored in electronic engineering for about a year until I hit statics and dynamics. And that meant I was going to be a philosophy major. And as a philosophy major, that really launched me on a quest for my journey to understand the divine presence in the world and all that. So yeah, I have a kind of a unique bag of interests: astrophysics and radio and theology and poetry and music. So
was there any point in time in your life that you decided, hey, with all these interests, you just want to become a priest? When did that happen? Or
that happened in college. Yeah. I grew up in a Baptist church, and I had kind of my sort of God crisis. And one of my professors sent me to, excuse me, I went to Wofford College in Spartanburg. One of my professors sent me to the Episcopal Church, and I met the priest there. And he was very kind and welcoming me and welcomed me to come back. And I said, yeah, I really liked it, but I got a lot of questions about God. And he looked at me with a really quizzical expression on his face, and he said, yeah, me too. That's when I knew I was home.
Well, that's a great story. Let me ask you, you just mentioned two people there. So you mentioned a professor made an impact on your life. Is that professor still around?
He's not,
Oh,
sadly enough. Charlie Barrett was his name, taught theology at Wofford College.
but I love it when people remember and give a shout out to those people. You mentioned also a priest. Is the priest still around?
No, Rogers Harris. He
Oh, bummer.
was my priest. We used to, since my last name is Harris, we'd go out to lunch. We become best buddies, and he would get a big kick out of telling the people at the restaurant that he was my father, but his wife was not the mother.
But no, but it's so cool
Yeah.
that you remember it, and you recognize them.
They made a huge impact on my life. So yeah.
So, in large part, then they became part of the reason you entered the priesthood, and so
Yeah.
you went. So you did your undergraduate work, then you went to seminary after that.
Yeah, I went to Sewanee, University of the South in Sewanee, Tennessee, and really loved being in Sewanee. It's the middle of nowhere, but it was a beautiful middle of nowhere. And then after serving churches, I wanted to go to New York and get my doctorate at General Seminary in New York, the Episcopal Seminary. And I also did a lot of cross-registered with Union Seminary and took a lot of courses there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and then you became. Let me get it correct. So, are you a priest or you were a?
No, I've graduated from priestly work. I'm a forgiveness teacher.
No, but
all the
before
way
you
now.
did that, when you went to the school and then you had your own, I guess, did you have your own church at one time?
Yeah, yeah.
And so your title there was, what was your title?
I was a priest. Yeah.
You were a priest
Yeah.
then. So
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that, because the story I think is fascinating, I guess, leading into you becoming this forgiveness guy. So you
Yeah.
were a priest, you were telling me off the air when 9/11 hit.
Yeah.
And so talk a little bit about that process.
Yeah, you know what? It was so interesting. I had finished my coursework for my doctorate, and I was working on my proposal and my dissertation, and I needed to work because I'm independently poor instead of independently wealthy. And to support my family, I had a couple of different jobs, church-related jobs, and then I got this phone call about being considered for a new position that was being created at St. Paul's Chapel, which is a part of Trinity Church Wall Street. And St. Paul's Chapel is George Washington's church. You know, it's where he went on the day of his inauguration as our country's first president. It's one of the oldest churches in the city, and yet they wanted to do the newest thing. And so I had been doing some of this work at other churches. And so we were talking about starting a jazz mass, which is what we did at St. Paul's before 9/11. I had the best job in a lifetime, you know, as far as my dreams were considered. And we were doing jazz masses. We had I had a really kicking band and having a lot of fun, just kind of opening the doors of the church, you know, to people who have been burned by the church or have no interest in the church. Just kind of expressing one aspect of God's love for the world, and using the city as a theological text, you know, the idea that God loves the city. And that was part of my mantra, and just exploring how this divine love, it creatively was expressed in urban architecture and life and music and beats and poets. And yeah, I love New York City. I miss it. Yeah.
But the cool thing is you were given the flexibility, though, to
Yeah.
run with it however you wanted.
Yeah, I mean, within constraint, I was working
Right.
with a team. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So,
It was the royal we. It wasn't just me. It was a bunch of us, you know.
so
Yeah.
9/11 came, and what happened?
Well, I was in my office on the morning of 9/11 and heard a loud crack, and I wasn't quite sure what was going on. I went to the window to look out, and I saw papers flying by. It's like a Yankees ticker tape parade, but all the edges of the papers were burned, and it was clear that something horrible was going on. And then I ran up the street with a colleague to see if we could help out. And as we ran towards the towers, we encountered so many people running away from the towers, covered in soot and ashes, and some of them even in blood. And I got to the foot of the South Tower just in time for the second hijacked airplane to collide with it. And that's where I was in the morning of 9/11, running, dodging the debris that was coming down from the South Tower. Then by the weekend, you know, we had set up a feeding operation in front of St. Paul's. It was affectionately referred to as the barbecue on Broadway.
Oh,
And we were doing about 200, 200 burgers, 200 hot dogs, until the health department shut us down. That's a whole funny story, you know. Then we moved the food service inside the church and continued doing that. And we served meals the whole 8.5 months and served over 500,000 meals with about 15,000 volunteers. It was written up in all the major newspapers, New York Times and all that.
Now, had the church before that been involved in a food ministry at all?
No. The reason we were in it is because we were directly across the street from Building 5 of the World Trade Center. You could throw a rock from the cemetery and hit the World Trade Center. It just became necessary, all the stuff we had planned, we had to shift it. And that was a part of the struggle too, because, we didn't know what to do or how to do it best. And there was conflict between me and the hierarchy of the church, and all sides made mistakes, and we all had learning experiences and opportunities, but working together, we were able to continue the mission for 8.5 months.
So you mentioned the 8.5 months. What happened at that point in time?
At that point, I resigned from the church, and because I was really bitter, I felt I didn't get the support I deserved or that I needed. I felt that we let down our clients, the first responders. I felt we could have done better. And, and I had a sort of a bit of a self-righteous indignation about it all, which didn't make things any better. I was unskilled in dealing with this kind of conflict. And so I just got really bitter. I went to the Cathedral of St. John the Divine after that for 2 years and tried to continue some of that work there. I was a consultant at the Cathedral for Urban Ministries, and we started a program called the Reimagining the City Project, and trying to bring together the brightest minds in urban architecture and community organizing and, all the different groups to talk about who do we want to be after 9/11.
Because
Didn't get really far.
Because I guess when I first met you, and we'll talk about this experience as well, you were preparing a TED Talk about a concept. I want you to talk a little bit more about the concept, because I love how you even introduce yourself, in terms of, I don't know, call yourself the forgiveness, or what do you call yourself, forgiveness guru, or what do you call yourself?
No, I'm a co-traveler on the journey of forgiveness,
But I love it. And talk a little bit about that. So I met you, and you're going to do your first presentation on forgiveness. What was that all about?
I mentioned that I was bitter and just in a dark place, a dark hole for about a decade, and every time I thought about what happened, I got upset all over again, And then I got to know a guy named Fred Luskin, who's a professor at Stanford University, and he started the Stanford University Forgiveness Project, and I work with him now. And he said that forgiveness really is making peace with the word no. It's not forgive and forget like a Hallmark card. It's, you wanted this, but life gave you this. And somehow you got to figure out how to make up that gap. And we find all kinds of creative ways to make up that gap. Some people choose addictions. Some people choose drama in their relationships. Or some people are affected by depression. But once we are able to see that every one of us is going to get a no out of life, even if you lived a charmed life, someday, you're going to die. I mean, the biggest problem with life, I think, who was it that said this, Oscar Wilde maybe, or Mark Twain maybe, that the biggest problem with life is that none of us are going to get out alive. So what are we going to do with it? Are we going to spend 20 years stewing over something that happened a long time ago and sabotage our future? Are we going to find a way to let it go and embrace our power in the moment and rewrite our destiny? That's what forgiveness work is about.
And talk about the process, because it's so funny you're saying that. And that not too long ago, I had a discussion with my wife, and she was telling me about some experience that happened 20 years ago, and she was telling me that I should go back and confront the person, something that happened 20 years ago. I had no interest in it. It meant nothing to me, because I care about now rather than 20 years ago.
Then,
But let me ask you that, though. Can you, if you have experiences in your life that happened many years ago, do you have to go back and relive them, or you can start afresh?
It depends on where you are now. I mean, if you haven't worked to process something, it doesn't matter if it happened 2 days ago or 20 years ago, you still have a significant detrimental impact on your nervous system and your health. Your blood, when you think about it, your blood pressure increases, your heart rate increases, you know, your incidence of depression increase, your sleep is compromised at night. I mean, there's a lot of health related hard science that we now know that forgiveness helps us overcome. It's incredible. One research article said that the choice to forgive is good for us on a par with quitting smoking. That's huge.
Because you're telling your story, and I'm wondering,
Yeah.
boy, you seem to be the least likely guy I would ever think would, have been bothered by something. You just have a great attitude, great smile,
Oh,
great
thank you.
disposition. But I guess, is that something you learned, or I had to acquire the skills?
You know what happened is I moved to North Carolina to help out at a retreat center, and I moved from LA. So my first thought was, where's the Ethiopian restaurant?
And there is one in Asheville.
I know, I like it too. It's good. What is it? I forget the name. Green was New York. But yeah, so I got here and I decompressed. The other thing that Dr. Luskin said to me, Fred said to me, is that, if you can only think about the bad things about half the time and count your blessings if you can the other half the time, it will really have a positive impact on your nervous system, which will really generate a lot of energy to move forward. And he was right about that. The antidote to non-forgiveness is gratitude, and this is what I said in my TED talk. I finally realized that the best way to forgive is to be grateful for all the good things I have in my life and not spend my time upset about what I lost, because we're all going to lose stuff. It's just life.
And we'll give a shout out if you can. You just mentioned TED Talk. That was a couple months ago. That Barry Barton, right, ran
Barry
that?
Barton, Stand and Deliver Asheville, man, she is incredible. It was her first year doing the TEDx program Asheville, and she took this cohort of individuals. And my impression of a TED Talk was like individuals just show up and do their thing and they go on their way. But she had a different idea about how to do a TED Talk. She brought us together as a community, and we listened to each other and we helped each other. We gave advice, we critiqued, we offered our heartfelt sort of thoughts about what was said, and it made us so much better, and it bonded us as a cohesive group. And when I took the stage in Asheville that day at the Diana Wortham Theater, I had eight other people who were right there in the trenches with me, and it was really a lot of support. She did a great job with this, and it became really like an incubator for your business or your work in the world, because it brought together all these people and other folks as well to network and to talk about your ideas.
Now, is that the first time you had ever given a speech of that magnitude on forgiveness?
I've done keynotes on all around the world, 6 continents actually, but I had never done a TED Talk, and this was very different. And Barry's coaching helped me see that it was a different talk, and it needed to be tighter, not as conversational maybe as I usually do when I give talks. So it was a different talk, and I'm glad I did it, and I learned so much. Yeah.
Now, folks want to view that. I think you mentioned to me off the air. It's going to be available in the near
it'll
future.
It'll be posted probably by the time this comes out, probably in a week or two.
Okay, and they'll be able to then find it. Let's talk about 2 ways. So they can look on the TED Talks, I guess. You also have a website, is that correct?
I have a website, yeah.
So they'll be able to find it, I assume, on
I'll
your
post
website?
it there as soon as it's available too,
Well, since we mentioned it, your website is what?
LyndonHarris.com.
Okay, and you can see the name if you can read it, but it's Lyndon Harris.com. And if they go there, they'll be able to get the TED Talk. What else will they find if they go to that website?
I have a lot of resources available, like what forgiveness is and is not, and the 9 steps of forgiveness, how to forgive yourself. lot of resources available for people who are interested in doing this work. And it really is important for every one of us, because it's a part of life that something isn't going to work out the way we wanted it to, or something's not going to happen that we hoped would. And there's this tragic element of life, and the forgiveness work helps us find support and moves us from being a victim. See, my problem was I was a victim because I talked all the time about how other people had treated me a certain way. I was a victim in someone else's narrative. But when I figured it out and I chose the path of forgiveness, I became a hero on my own journey.
I love it.
You know, moving from being victim to hero, victim to agent, victim to author, claiming my authority as the agent of my life. And there's power in that. I'm the fact that I'm alive is testimony to the power of forgiveness.
Talk about the process then. So if somebody has issues that they're facing and they need to learn forgiveness, is this something you can learn quickly, or does it have to take months, years? How can you learn to forgive?
It's a process, just like learning to throw a baseball. I mean, there are steps. The methodology that I teach is the Stanford methodology, and there's about 6 steps in it. You know, one is figuring out what happened that you didn't want to have happen, or what happened that hurt you, and being clear about it, not saying, you know, well, I'm okay, just saying this happened and it really hurt.
Let me just stop you a second. So
Yeah.
let's go through those, because I'm kind
Yeah.
of fascinated by it. So if you have an issue, I guess something's bothering you or in your gut or whatnot, or you're angry with something, the first thing you should do is specify specifically what that something is. So name it. What's the second step?
In the naming, we claim a little power over it so that we can decide what to do with it.
Give an example.
Someone cut me off in traffic today.
Yeah.
Oh, I almost wrecked. And this didn't actually happen, but this is the story I always go to when I begin my forgiveness seminars, because everyone can relate to it, you know, and some of us sometimes almost wreck because of the reckless driving of the person. And so when someone cuts me off in traffic, I get angry. Well, it's good to be able to express that anger. And then there's a little process I do. And then I ask people to talk about how they felt about the act. You know, I felt angry, I felt hurt, I was scared. And then I ask them, so what did you do about it?
Wait, let me slow down. So just trying to understand it. These are other steps in the 6 steps?
Well, this is a part of the first step, just to identify what's going on.
Give me an example of the name you give to it then. So you go through
this. It's a grievance.
And you call it a grievance, or do you give it a specific name?
Grievance. Well, see, I had a grievance with the person who cut me off in traffic.
Gotcha. Sure.
Yeah.
So you don't call it Lyndon, though. You give it a specific, not a name.
Yeah.
So you define it. What's next after the first step?
Then you figure out what you did in response. Well, I caught up with him and I flicked him off, or whatever it is you do.
Right.
You know, I cut him off in traffic. And then I asked people to put a check mark beside everything they did in response to what happened that changed what happened. It's not possible.
I was thinking that. Yeah, right. Exactly.
It's not possible. You know, Lily Tomlin, the comedian, said that forgiveness means giving up all hope of a better past.
But it's true.
So you have this grievance.
Right.
You can continue to be mad about it and angry and upset with it, but every time you do, you're compromising your joy in your life. You're becoming a sourpuss to live with, you know, and you're not living your best life. And through the forgiveness work, we can live better, happier, more joy-filled lives, and actually make a difference in a way that we couldn't otherwise.
So I've heard 2 steps. What's the third?
Yeah. Well, so we identify the grievance, then we talk about certain parts of the grievance. There's this element that's at the heart of every grievance. We call it an unenforceable rule. And I'll give you an example of an unenforceable rule. The person who is always late for lunch shows up late again. And my unenforceable rule is that this time he's going to be on time. Unenforceable rules are these ideas that we have that somebody's going to do something that they're not going to do. And when we hold on to this idea and get upset by it, we're helpless. We're powerless. We give away our power. So when we acknowledge that unenforceable rule, then we're able to look at it in the bigger picture, and then you just begin to kind of widen the scope. One of the steps I call Q-tip: quit taking it personally. Going back to the guy in traffic, who cut me off. How do I know he was out to get me? That's my first thought. Maybe, and this is one of the examples I use in my forgiveness classes, maybe he's a pediatric surgeon on his way to the hospital to save the life of a kid. I don't know. So why do I jump to conclusions? It could be just as much that as it is the other.
You mentioned something which is kind of interesting. I love it, called unenforceable rule. And
Yeah.
so I used to have same kind of thing when I used to run meetings. And sometimes I'd get upset. People weren't there on time. It didn't begin on time.
Yeah.
And so I just said, rather than be bothered by it, I just started every meeting at time. If they're there, fine. If not, they miss whatever they miss, rather than being upset by it. And it was just, it was stupid to be upset.
You're acknowledging the unenforceable rule that people should be on time.
The worst sin in the world is, the should-isms and whatnot.
Yeah,
so,
the should nots.
Right, we've gone through steps 3 or 4. What's after that?
Then we talk about looking at the self-forgiveness story. Okay, so we've brought all this around. We've looked at the different elements of the forgiveness journey. And then we focus on self-forgiveness. And that's a really big one, because, we're so hard on ourselves, and we conflate guilt and shame, and it just becomes a never-ending cycle. We have to break free of that. Lou Smead said that forgiveness is setting a prisoner free and finding out after the fact that you were the prisoner. So we work on that. And the final step is rewriting your story. So moving from being a victim to a victor, a victim to a hero, a victim to an agent. I'm writing my memoir now. I wrote this story 15 years ago, but it's been on the hard drive of 5 different computers. It was a story of a victim, and I never felt power in sharing that story. But now, working with a new editor, writing it as a memoir, I'm writing it right here from my place in good old Zirconia, North Carolina. I look out, I see the mountains, I hear my chickens cackling, my dog barking off in the distance, and I hear the stream not far from us. It's like I'm rooted in a healed state, or a state of healing that I didn't have, say, even 7 or 8 years ago.
Well, that must be very exciting when you write that last chapter, or the last part of it.
Yeah.
And then it must be, like, you're to that point, it must be a very positive feeling.
Yeah.
It happens to you.
The final chapter is going to be the 20th anniversary of 9/11 in New York City. I was invited back to go to St. Paul's Chapel to take part in the reading of the name ceremony. And I told, I told a lot of the stories that happened, because, everyone there now is relatively new and didn't really know that much. And then I finally, sitting there in the quiet, and this is how I ended my TED talk, this quotation came to me from Khaled Hosseini in his book, his novel, Kite Runner. And he said, and that's a forgiveness story. It's a beautiful story of forgiveness. He said, maybe that's how forgiveness budded, not with the epiphany of, a loud noise or any dramatic event, but with pain, waking up in the middle of the night and quietly collecting its things and slipping away unannounced. I mean, that's
great.
Beautiful.
Lyndon, if folks want to get more information about some of the things you've talked about, or it'll be a TED Talk, it'll also be the book when it comes out, your speaking engagements, the whole bit, what's the best bet?
Best bet is you can catch me on Facebook, you can catch me on Instagram. I'm Lyndon F. Harris. My email is lyndonfharris@gmail.com, and my website is lyndonharris.com. That's LYNDONHARRIS. Would love to be in touch with your listeners, and I'm grateful to be on the show with you. Thank you.
Well, anyway, thanks for being our guest this second half hour on the Blainesworld Show. Also, Jim Davidson, my guest on the first half hour. my producer, Cappy Tassetti. I look forward to having you join me next Wednesday here at 9 a.m. on WPVM 103.7. Also catch us on WPVM's Facebook page. I look forward to actually, rather than online all the time, I look forward to someday meeting you.
I look forward to that. Thank
Okay,
you.
thanks a lot.
Yeah.